For 2 long months, the alien sisters waited in silence. Their eyes followed every move of the human who now held their fate in his hands. One sister represented peace, the other power. But only his choice could decide the future of their world. The stars themselves seemed to pause as the final day arrived. Whispers spread through the alien court. Who will he choose? The sisters stood side by side, their hearts racing, but the human's expression gave nothing away. He had promised to decide today, yet what he was about to do would leave everyone in the chamber completely speechless. For 2 long months, the alien sisters had waited. Every sunrise and every sunset, their thoughts circled around one man, a human who now carried the weight of their future. They had given him time, believing he needed to understand, to feel, and to decide. But now the time was gone. The day had come when his choice could no longer be delayed. The sisters were not ordinary, born under twin moons. They carried a bond that was deeper than words. Yet even between them, silence had grown heavy in those 2 months. Both wanted the same thing the humans promised, but neither dared to speak too openly about it. Each believed that if she showed too much hope, the other would see weakness. So, they waited in quiet, their hearts filled with questions. The human did not live like them, did not think like them, and yet his presence had changed everything. When he first arrived on their world, he was seen as an outsider, a wanderer who carried only curiosity. But soon the sisters discovered something unusual. The ancient relic of their people, a structure older than memory, responded only to him. No one else could touch it without it remaining cold and lifeless. But when his hand rested upon its surface, it glowed as if the stars themselves had awakened. From that day forward, their destiny became tied to him. One sister represented calmness, wisdom, and the hope of peace. She spoke softly, her eyes filled with kindness, and many of their people saw her as the future of gentle rule. The other sister carried strength in her words, confidence in her steps, and a spirit that drew others to follow. She was seen as the leader who could guide them with power, protect them from threats, and lead them into greatness. Both visions mattered, and both had followers. But in the end, the relic had chosen the human, and that meant his word would decide who would lead. The sisters knew this was not only about themselves. The court waited, the council waited, and the people waited. Their empire's path hung in silence, and all because of one man who did not even belong to their world. The human had not asked for such wait. He had come to learn, to see the stars, to find meaning beyond his own small home. Yet here he stood, between two sisters who looked at him with expectation in their eyes. He walked through their palace halls, hearing the echoes of whispers behind him. Everyone asked the same question, which sister will he choose? But in his heart, the answer was not simple. He had grown close to both of them. One reminded him of warmth, comfort, and understanding. The other inspired him, challenged him, and made him see strength in himself that he never knew he had. How could he choose between them? How could any choice feel right when the wrong one might break not just a bond of sisters, but an entire world's balance? On the final morning, the palace was filled with quiet tension. The great chamber was prepared. The council members sat in curved rows, their eyes fixed on the doorway. The twin moons shone faintly through the tall windows, as if they too were watching. The sisters entered together, dressed in shimmering robes that carried their family's legacy. They stood at the center of the hall, their faces calm, but their hearts heavy. Then the doors opened. The human stepped inside. His steps echoed across the polished floor, steady but filled with unspoken weight. Every gaze followed him, every breath seemed to pause. The sisters lifted their eyes, searching his face, but his expression revealed nothing. He stopped before them, his hands at his sides, his shoulders tense. For 2 months, he had delayed. For 2 months, he had promised himself that when the moment came, he would be ready. But now, standing here, looking into the eyes of the sisters, he realized the truth. He was not ready at all. The chamber grew colder with silence. The council members waited, the sisters waited, and still he did not speak. In his mind, countless thoughts collided. If he chose peace, would strength be lost? If he chose strength, would peace fade away? Could he truly place the weight of a galaxy on one decision? Finally, the elder of the council rose and spoke in a clear voice. The time is over. The human must choose." The words echoed through the chamber like a final bell. The sisters stood still, their hearts beating faster with each second. The human raised his head, his eyes moving from one sister to the other. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. The air around him seemed heavy, pressing against him like unseen hands. Everyone leaned forward, waiting. Every second felt stretched into forever. The sister's eyes held his, one with gentle hope, the other with fierce determination. And then he drew in a slow breath. His voice was low but steady as he said, "I cannot choose, not yet." The chamber filled with gasps. The council members whispered among themselves, shocked by his words. The sisters exchanged a quick glance, their faces calm, but their hearts shaken. For 2 long months, they had waited for this moment, certain that an answer would come. But the humans' refusal was not the end they expected. Instead, it was only the beginning of something greater, something hidden beneath the surface that none of them yet understood. And as silence filled the chamber once again, one thought echoed in the minds of all who were present. Whatever choice the human finally made, it would not be ordinary. It would change everything. The chamber remained silent after the humans' words, but beneath that silence a storm of thoughts moved through every mind present. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. The court whispered softly, and the 2 sisters stood still, their expressions calm though their hearts carried a weight that words could not hide. For 2 months they had imagined this moment, picturing how his choice would shape everything, and yet he had spoken only uncertainty. The human had not chosen, and that uncertainty spread across the palace like a shadow. Later that night, while the palace corridors were quiet, the 2 sisters met in secret. Their steps were soft against the smooth stone floor, their robes brushing gently as they moved into a hidden chamber lit by pale blue crystals. For the first time in many weeks, they allowed themselves to speak openly, without the eyes of the council or the ears of their people pressing close. "He does not know the truth," whispered the Sister of Peace. Her voice trembled, though she tried to hold it steady. "He believes this choice is only between us, but it is not. It is about the relic. It is about the destiny of our world." The Sister of Strength lowered her gaze, her jaw tight. "If he knew, he would see the burden we place upon him. He is already lost in doubt. To reveal more would only crush him. But how long can we keep this hidden?" The gentler sister asked. "He feels the weight already. He wonders why he was chosen. He deserves to know." The stronger sister turned sharply, her eyes fierce but troubled. "And if he learns that the relic will only awaken with his decision, that our people believe his voice alone can bring unity or ruin, do you think he will stay? Or will he walk away and leave us with nothing?" Their words echoed softly in the chamber, neither sister able to answer fully. They had both seen the human's hesitation, the way his eyes shifted between them as though searching for escape. Yet deep down, both also knew that his presence was no accident. The relic, older than memory, had never responded to their touch or to the touch of their ancestors. But with the human, it glowed. It pulsed with hidden power, as if waiting for him. Elsewhere in the palace, the human wandered the corridors alone. The voices of the council still lingered in his ears, each member expecting him to resolve a future that did not belong to him. He felt like a traveler who had stumbled into a story too large to carry. Every step reminded him that 2 sisters, 2 visions of the future, rested upon his shoulders. He paused before a tall window, looking out at the twin moons that hung over the city like silent watchers. He thought about the gentle sister who had guided him through the gardens, showing him the beauty of life growing even in harsh soil. She spoke to him about peace, about healing, about building trust where there had once been fear. And he thought about the stronger sister who had challenged him during the councils, her voice sharp but filled with passion, her eyes burning with the desire to protect her people at any cost. Both were true, both were needed, and that was the heart of his struggle. How could he choose one without breaking the other? As he stood there lost in thought, the faint sound of voices carried through the walls. The words were distant, hushed, but one phrase caught his ear: the relic. He froze, pressing closer to the stone, listening as carefully as he could. He must never know. A voice whispered, "If he learns what the relic demands, he may refuse us all." The human's eyes widened, He pressed his hand against the cold surface of the wall, hearing the muffled tones of the sisters speaking together. His heart pounded, not from fear but from realization. They had kept something from him, something greater than the choice between them. He turned away from the window, his mind racing. The sisters were not asking only for his loyalty or his affection. They were waiting for something tied to the relic, something far beyond personal ties. And if that was true, then his part in their world was larger than anything he had imagined. Meanwhile, within the hidden chamber, the sisters ended their conversation in silence. They both knew time was slipping away, and the human would not remain ignorant forever. Soon, he would learn the truth, and when that moment came, neither sister knew what he would do. The palace remained quiet through the night, but under that quiet lay questions that grew heavier with each hour. The human could feel it, the sisters could feel it, and even the relic, resting deep within its ancient chamber, seemed to pulse faintly as though it too waited for what was coming. And when dawn finally broke across the twin moons, the palace stirred with new whispers. The council prepared to demand progress. The people grew restless, and the sisters walked side by side with eyes that carried hidden secrets. The human, however, carried something new as well, the faint sound of truth he was never meant to hear. And in that truth lay a mystery he could no longer ignore. The morning light spread across the palace halls, but it brought no peace to the human. He walked slowly through the quiet corridors, his thoughts circling like restless shadows. The words he had overheard the night before still pressed against his mind, words about the relic, about secrets, about things that had been hidden from him since the day he arrived. He had thought his struggle was only between two sisters, two paths, two futures. But now he realized the truth was much deeper, and he could not escape it. He remembered the way the relic had glowed when his hand touched it for the first time. It had not been a soft glow, but a sudden burst of light, as though it had recognized him. The council had fallen silent. The sisters had stared at him in wonder, and from that moment everything had changed. Now he understood his connection. To the relic was not a symbol, it was a demand. The relic was waiting for something only he could give. As he entered the garden, he found the gentler sister waiting for him. She smiled faintly, though her eyes carried the same unease he felt. "You could not sleep," she said softly. "Neither could you," he replied. They walked among the silver trees in silence for a while. The leaves shimmered faintly in the morning light, their glow reflected in the calm waters of a nearby fountain. Finally, she turned to him, her voice quiet but steady. "You believe this is about choosing me or my sister, but there is more. You sense it, do you not?" The human stopped walking. Her words confirmed what he already knew. "There's something you're not telling me," he said. "Something about the relic." Her lips pressed together. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed. "The relic is not only a test of loyalty. It is a key. Our people believe it holds the future of our world. But it will only awaken when you choose. That is why everyone waits for your answer. They believe your choice will decide who leads us." He listened, his chest tightening. "So it was never about just us," he said slowly. "It was never about me choosing one sister over the other. It was always about the relic." She lowered her eyes. "It is both. You must understand, our people see you as more than a traveler. They see you as the one who will guide us into what comes next." The human turned away, staring at the rising light over the palace walls. "I never asked for this," he whispered. Later, that day, he found himself in the grand library, its shelves stretching higher than any human could reach. He hoped for quiet, but instead he saw the stronger sister there, her presence sharp like the edge of a blade. She looked at him with steady eyes. "You have heard things you were not meant to hear," she said calmly. He did not deny it. "You should have told me." Her gaze did not waver. "Would you have stayed if we had? You speak of truth, but truth carries weight, and not everyone is strong enough to bear it." He clenched his hands at his sides. "So you would rather I walk blind?" She stepped closer, her voice firm but not unkind. "I would rather you see clearly when the time comes, not before. Doubt weakens choices, and you are already filled with doubt." Her words struck deep because they were true. He was filled with doubt about himself, about the sisters, about the relic, about everything. And yet beneath that doubt was something else, something he could not name. A pull, a whisper, a call that seemed to come from the relic itself. That night, unable to rest, he wandered through the quiet halls until he found himself outside the ancient chamber where the relic was kept. The guards bowed to him but did not stop him. Slowly, he stepped inside. The air was cool and still. The great structure standing tall in the center of the room, its surface dark and silent. Yet the moment he drew near, faint lines of light stirred across it, as if recognizing his presence. He lifted his hand but did not touch it. The glow flickered, waiting. In that moment he felt both fear and wonder. He realized the relic was not asking for a choice between the sisters. It was asking for something greater, something he did not yet understand. Footsteps echoed behind him. He turned and saw both sisters standing together in the doorway. Their eyes met his, filled with expectation, but also with something else, uncertainty. They too feared what the relic might reveal when the time finally came. The human looked back at the glowing surface, his heart heavy. The sisters thought they were waiting for his choice, but he now understood they were all waiting for the relic's truth. And when that truth came, it might not be what anyone expected. The relic chamber was filled with a quiet that seemed alive, as though the very air was holding its breath. The human stood before the ancient structure, his hand hovering near its glowing surface, while the two sisters watched from the doorway. Their eyes, so different yet bound by the same blood, held a mixture of fear and hope. He lowered his hand slowly, unwilling to touch it, but the faint light that ran across the relic did not fade. It pulsed softly, waiting, as though it already knew his heart. When the sisters stepped inside, their robes whispered against the smooth floor. They stopped beside him, their presence a reminder of the choice he still carried. The gentler sister spoke first, her voice soft but steady. It responds only to you. Even now, it calls to you. That is why we asked for your choice, but the truth is deeper than anyone told you. The stronger sister added, her tone firm but calm. The relic was built by the first ones, those who walked the stars before us. Our people believe it carries the power to guide the future. It does not open to us, or to the council, or to any ruler, only you. That is why you matter more than you understand. The human listened, his chest heavy. And if I make the wrong choice? He asked quietly. The gentler sister looked at him with sadness. Then the relic may remain silent forever. The stronger sister's eyes did not waver. Or it may bring a path none of us are ready for. Their words carried weight, but no clarity. He turned back to the relic, watching the way the lines of light curved across its surface, as if forming patterns he almost recognized but could not yet understand. He felt the silence of the chamber press against him, not heavy, but expectant. The relic seemed alive, waiting for him to act. That night, the council met in secret. The human was not present, but whispers traveled quickly through the palace. The elders debated fiercely. Some said the relic should be left untouched. Others said the human must be pressed for an answer. But one thing became clear: patience was fading. The empire had waited long enough, and the people demanded resolution. In the days that followed, the human walked through the city beyond the palace walls. He had seen the sisters. He had heard the council, but he had not yet seen the lives of the ordinary people who waited in silence for his choice. The streets were filled with glowing lamps and quiet voices. Some citizens looked at him with respect, others with unease, as if he were a stranger holding their lives in his hands. Children whispered his name as he passed, while elders bowed with reverence. It was then he realized the truth. His choice was not just about the sisters, nor even the relic. It was about every soul who lived under the twin moons. One evening, as the sun set in shades of silver and gold, the human returned to the palace gardens. Both sisters were there, waiting, their eyes reflecting the soft light. They did not speak at first, but the silence between them carried all the words they could not say. Finally, the human broke the stillness. You want me to choose between you, but what if the relic asks me to choose something else? The gentler sister's breath caught. The stronger sister frowned, though her eyes softened for a brief moment. What do you mean? She asked. He shook his head slowly. When I stand before it, I don't feel it pulling me toward one or the other. I feel it asking for something more, something beyond either of you. The sisters exchanged a glance, their expressions uncertain. For all their knowledge, for all their guidance, they too did not know the full truth of the relic. That night, unable to rest, the human returned to the chamber alone. The relic glowed faintly as he approached, its lines shifting as though alive. He lifted his hand, and this time he touched its surface. A pulse of light rippled outward, filling the chamber with a quiet hum. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was standing in a place of stars. The stars stretched endlessly around him, brighter and closer than he had ever seen. He felt weightless, yet grounded, as though standing at the center of all things. And there, in the midst of the starlight, he heard a voice not in sound, but in thought. It spoke with calm certainty. Though its words were simple, "You must see what lies ahead." Visions filled his mind. He saw the sisters, each walking their path. One path led to harmony, where peace blossomed but strength faded. The other path led to power, where their people rose to greatness. But shadows gathered at their borders. Both paths shone brightly, yet both carried loss. The visions shifted. He saw the people, countless lives depending on what he would decide. He saw their laughter, their hopes, their fears. And then he saw himself, not as an outsider, but as a thread woven into the fabric of their destiny. The light faded slowly, and he found himself once more in the chamber, his hands still resting on the relic. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, and his heart pounded with the weight of what he had seen. The relic had not given him an answer. It had only shown him possibilities. The choice was still his. When he stepped out of the chamber, both sisters were waiting. Their eyes searched his face, hoping for clarity. But all he could say was, "I saw what could be, and it is not simple." The sisters exchanged a glance, and for the first time, both of them understood that his choice would not only decide between them, it would decide the path of their entire world. And though they had waited patiently for 2 months, they realized the true waiting had only just begun. The chamber was quiet, though the air felt heavy with the weight of choices yet to be made. The human stood at the center, his presence unusual, in a hall built for beings far older and wiser than him. Yet somehow all eyes were on him. The 2 alien sisters waited at the far side, their gowns flowing like living light, shimmering with colors that seemed to reflect their emotions. For 2 months they had waited, never once pressing him for an answer. But their patience had reached its limit. Now, every movement of his hands, every pause in his breathing, was being watched. The elder sister lowered her eyes, her voice calm yet trembling with the strength of hope. She had spent her time showing him compassion, guiding him through the halls, reminding him of harmony and balance. She believed he would choose her because her way meant safety and unity, not just for them but for everyone beyond these walls. Yet the younger sister, bold and unafraid, stood with her head high, her eyes burning like stars. She had whispered to him of ambition, of dreams so vast they could break the limits of their kind. She believed he would choose her, not because of tradition, but because she offered him something beyond the ordinary, a future filled with daring and greatness. The council waited in silence, holding their breath. No sound echoed except the gentle hum of the great pillars that carried the energy of their world. Some believed the human had already made his choice, but was keeping it hidden for reasons unknown. Others thought he was still undecided, caught between the sisters, unable to weigh their differences. But no one could understand the truth that played within his heart. He walked slowly across the chamber, each step making the sisters' anticipation rise. His gaze lingered on the elder for a moment, then shifted to the younger. Their eyes locked on his, searching for a sign, but his expression gave away nothing. Every second stretched longer, as though time itself had been slowed by the weight of his decision. The counselors leaned forward, eager to hear the words that would end the waiting. Yet instead of speaking, he stopped halfway, turning toward the great window that looked out upon the stars. He placed his hand against the glass, staring into the endless sky as though searching for answers hidden beyond the constellations. Whispers began to fill the chamber. Why was he hesitating? Why did he not simply choose one of them and end the tension? The sisters exchanged a glance, but neither spoke. They knew pressing him now could ruin everything. Finally, he turned back, his face calm but unreadable. He stepped closer to them, his presence drawing the room into silence once again. The sisters' hands trembled slightly, their hearts beating faster than they had in months. Everyone expected a simple declaration, a name spoken that would forever change their lives, but the human did not give them what they expected. His voice was soft yet firm, carrying across the hall, and in that moment he said something none of them had imagined. The choice he revealed was not between the sisters, nor was it about who would stand by his side. It was something larger, something that shifted the meaning of all their waiting. The council gasped, and even the sisters stood frozen, their carefully prepared hearts unready for his words. For 2 months, they had believed they understood him, believed they had guessed the path he would take, but now they realized the human had been walking a road of his own, a road that neither of them had seen. The chamber filled with silence once more, but it was no longer the silence of waiting. It was the silence of shock, of discovery, and of questions that could no longer be avoided. The human's choice had begun to change everything, and the sisters, though stunned, felt something deeper stirring within them. The journey was far from over. The council chamber was no longer the same after the human's words. The silence that followed had turned into quiet murmurs across the room, whispers of disbelief and curiosity. The sisters, who had prepared themselves for a simple answer, now stood caught between surprise and wonder. Their eyes stayed fixed on him, trying to understand the meaning behind his unexpected choice. He had not chosen one over the other, but instead spoken of a path that belonged to neither sister alone. His voice had carried certainty, yet there was also mystery hidden in his decision, as though he saw a truth that none of them yet understood. The elder sister felt her heart sway between relief and confusion. She had feared rejection, yet she had not been chosen either. Instead, the human's choice seemed to lift her beyond what she had imagined, showing her a possibility where her role was not bound to loss. The younger sister, bold and restless, felt the same confusion, but also a strange spark of excitement. She had dreamed of being the one he stood beside, but instead, he had drawn them into something larger, something that stretched far beyond personal longing. Their waiting had not been for nothing, but the ending was nothing like they had expected. The human stood calmly, his gaze moving from one sister to the other, then to the council. He did not falter under their stares. His words carried weight because they came from a place of honesty, and even those who doubted him could feel it. The chamber, once filled with the certainty of tradition, now felt open, uncertain, yet strangely alive. The stars outside the tall windows shone brighter as though listening to the unfolding story. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one of the oldest counselors rose, his voice quiet yet filled with curiosity. He asked the human to explain, to share why he had chosen differently, why he had not followed the expected path. The human answered with calm strength. He spoke of how he had watched the sisters not as rivals, but as to halves of something greater. He spoke of the lessons he had learned from both, the patience of the elder, the courage of the younger, and how these were not qualities to be divided, but qualities to be united. His words held no judgment, no favoritism. They carried the strange simplicity of truth. The sisters listened, their hearts stirred in ways they could not name. They had waited for his choice with fear and hope, but now they realized his decision was not about separation, but about balance. The chamber grew silent again as his meaning settled in, and even those who had doubted his worth began to see something they had overlooked. The human was not bound by their traditions, not weighed down by the same chains of thought. He saw differently, and that difference was what made his presence so powerful. When he finished speaking, the air in the chamber felt lighter, yet filled with new questions. What did this choice mean for the sisters? What did it mean for the world they lived in? The council could not yet answer, nor could the sisters themselves. But they knew one thing: the human's decision had changed the path ahead. The months of waiting had led not to an end, but to the beginning of something far greater. As the sisters stood side by side, their hearts still racing, they shared a glance that carried more meaning than words. The human had not torn them apart. Instead, he had given them a reason to stand together. The chamber doors slowly opened, and beyond them stretched a future none of them had yet seen. The sisters and the human now had to walk into it together, carrying with them the weight of a choice that had left everyone speechless, and the mystery of what was still to come.